Welcome to Yamnuska Mountain Adventures and episode 3 of Barry Blanchard's greatest alpine first ascents in the Canadian Rockies, 1983 to 2002. And I was just telling one of my fellow guides here at our office that I really want an album cover like the Eagles, but can't see that coming anytime soon. So we're going to be talking about the first winter ascent on the north face of Mount Edith Cavell today. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to read from my book and then probably interrupt myself every once in a while to talk to what's happening on the slides. And then I'll be just telling the story of Howse Peak. And interestingly enough, both of these ascents happened basically in the same week, in the third week of March, maybe not the third week, second week of March, first week of March in 1988. And both were in the company of Ward Robinson, my buddy here, pictured on the slide, a recent picture of Ward and I. And toughest guy ever climbing the mountains with. And a little bit of some of the one-liners from our climbs. Ward, he was just a committed lifestyle climber. And the first time I met Ward was in Banff in 1983. He was in a shared apartment with half a dozen other climbers, wanting to hang out in the Canadian Rockies for the summer and climb. And oh, damn it. All right. So, hopefully everyone can see the slide now. Kind of got going there without sharing my screen. I apologize for that. Yeah, it happens. And also I'll mention here that if you have any questions, if you put them into, I think we're live on Facebook, then they can come to me via the chat box here, and or maybe I think Tim's going to have to write them down and bring them into me because I can't get the chat box to come up, but such is life. So back to the one-liners. Ward just kind of back to 1983. In this apartment in Banff, I'd been out climbing with Albie Soul. We stopped by and, in one of the rooms, kind of bedroom actually, do you want to meet Ward? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to meet Ward. And we go in and there's Ward sitting cross-legged on this bed, and he's stitching by hand patches onto his wind pants so that he can not have to buy new wind pants and climb longer. And we get to chatting, but even before we chatted, there's just some people you meet in this life that your souls reach out and shake hands or touch each other, whatever you want to call it. But there was just, before there was words, there was a connection. And that connection was that we both wanted to climb in the Alpine. That's what we wanted to do at that point in time. And it was great that we were able to synchronize that over the next 5 years. And the last episode ended with the first ascent of the Wild Thing, which was the first kind of really adventurous alpine route that I did with Ward. And it's amazing to me to this day how much he pared down his life to just go climbing at that period in time. Kind of like Tom Waits making music, that kind of commitment and purity, and just going climbing. So he'd work construction or drive cab and just finish his last shift as a roughneck, a job that I'd always thought I'd have growing up in Calgary because most of my male role models were roughnecks and rodeo cowboys. I did look into going to steer riding school or bull riding school out of grade 12, but thankfully I never did it. I think that'd be a really tough way to make a living. Not that being a roughneck would be an easy way to make a living, but the one-liner that we used on our climbs on Ward's last shift, it was -40, it was midnight. They're in the dressing room getting ready for their shift, and he looks at his partner, -40 outside, and says, "Why are we doing this? This is stupid." why are we doing this at these temperatures? And his partner looks back at him and goes, well, it's got to get done. So that was one of our one-liners for our climbs that season. It's got to get done. So, yeah, Ward. Yeah. And then a tree faller, a career that he continues to practice to this day. And he's 65 now. So, yeah, I don't know how many 65-year-old tree fallers you meet. It's too bad it's such a, I don't know, controversial occupation because, man, working in the woods and being a logger is pretty cool work. And yeah. Yeah, so we'll start reading here. So at 2 a.m. on March 9th, 1988, Ward and I stepped from a cold street in Banff into Geoff Creighton's van. Ward took shotgun and I stretched out in the back. Geoff pushed Blue Rodeo into the cassette player and we pulled out for the 4-hour drive to Mount Edith Cavell in Jasper. The north face of Cavell had never had a winter ascent, and we had just 2 days to do it, as Geoff and I had to be back to film some ice climbing with the Canadian Broadcast Corporation on the 11th of March. We rolled into the parking lot at daybreak and clicked into our skis for a long 12-mile ski up the Cavell Road. At the hostel close to the mountain, Ward and I waited for Geoff. He liked to train hard every day, and unfortunately, he'd done just that for the last 2 days. I just don't have the energy to do this, he said. I'm going back to the van, and I'll be there tomorrow when you guys get down. I promise. The air felt arctic, and gaunt clouds clung to the face. Ward and I knew that the cold wouldn't allow long belays on bare hands, and we decided to take the line of least resistance and keep moving to keep warm. We unloaded a lot of the rack onto Geoff and continued toward the Angel ice tongue. So yeah, step out of the reading here. So yeah, beautiful, clear winter day shot of the north face of Mount Edith Cavell. And I got this by taking a screenshot off of John Sherlock's page. Amazing aerial photographer, but I know John won't hold me any ill will because I had a long conversation with him the other night on the phone. Very a great resource for mountain photography in North America. Holy moly. You know, our generation's version of Bradford Washburn. But so yeah, here's the north face of Edith Cavell, and yeah, the Angel Glacier in 1988, it came all the way down here, and this, the Ghost Glacier, was actually still on the face. So Ward and I, in minus 25 Celsius, are coming up here along the lateral moraine, and then we're going to get onto these snow faces, traverse onto the Angel Icefall, head up, and yeah, get up on the north face of Edith Cavell above the Angel Glacier. A beautiful sea blue emanated from the ice of the Angel, but it was deadly, as the icefall commonly calved and half an acre of glacier topography could crumble in seconds, exposing blue ice that hadn't seen the light of day for at least 100 years. Ward and I wove our way through crevasses and into troughs. And I'll just mention that this is a summertime picture of the Angel Glacier from the 2000s. And yeah, I had a camera on this ascent with Ward, but I wasn't a very good photographer. I didn't get very many good pictures and not very many pictures at all. So I was cramponing up a semi-trailer size hunk of blue ice when it cracked deep and loud underfoot, and at the same instant settled 1 centimeter. My arm shot out and everything stopped, my heart included. The blue rope slithered on and I followed it, cramponing on eggshells and peering into deep black cracks and chambers bordered by snow and gray ice. Soon we were clear of the icefall and sitting on our packs on the flats of the upper glacier. The north face of Cavell scraped skyward like the white cliffs of Dover seen from the beach. It had already been a long day and we were tired, so I dug the stove out and we brewed up and drank and ate for an hour. And then we punched steps up the lower face. Snow-covered rock commanded our attention, yet we climbed unroped, both secure in the knowledge that neither of us would make a mistake. A huge ramp slanted left to right, took us to the Becky Chenard duty route. A large snow ledge cut across the entire face there, and I worried about the avalanche hazard, so we roped up. Ward began traversing left across the ledge to find a break in the overhangs above us. When the rope came tight, I followed, removing gear that he'd plugged into the wall and screws from the ice on the ledge. I kept the rope snug between us, 1,000 feet left and still no break. Our line looked ridiculously indirect, but we were moving and warm. So yeah, another summertime shot, and we've come up this left to right slanting ramp towards the base of the Chenard duty Becky route, and we're traversing this huge ledge that cuts all the way across the north face of Mount Edith Cavell, looking for some break in these steep cliffs above us, and we keep traversing quite a ways. Yeah, but like I said in the text, we're moving together, so we're staying warm, even though it's like minus 25 or colder. So the sun set and a bitter wind began to cut the face. I probed and probed, searching for 3 feet of snow depth to dig a snow cave, but there wasn't enough. Ward balked at my suggestion of a ledge. I have to get inside the snow. I'll freeze to death out here in my bag. We continued into the night, and a familiar feeling of desperation rose inside me as my core temperature sunk. We were losing control. Finally, the spike of my axe did not hit ice, and I dug 1.5 feet down and plunged it again. It hit ice, but I thought that we could dig a snow cave, and I shouted to Ward. He returned, and we started to dig. We got the smallest cave I've ever seen, about the size of a coffin. We squirmed in and I dug out the stove, but it wasn't burning properly, and I began to feel dozy. Ward had fallen asleep, and I jolted to the realization that we were poisoning ourselves with carbon monoxide. I turned the stove off and jiggled my knee where it lay against Ward's chest. I think we should just go to sleep, man. The stove is going to kill us. No, I need water. I have to have some fluids. Ward took the stove apart and cleaned it, and it fired to life full force, and we ate and drank in normal consciousness. Then we turned it off and twisted our headlamps off and fell into unconsciousness. Yeah, tight wee snow cave, that one. And yeah, the second time in 2 winters that we got a little bit in danger from working a stove in a snow cave. So yeah, if one of the takeaways for any aspirant alpinists who are going to go spend winter's nights in snow caves on the side of steep faces, ventilate, put holes in so oxygen and air can get in, and maintain your stove. Make sure it's burning hot and clean and as good as it can. The next morning, we found a break at the Colorado Spur. The climbing was superb, and we sprinted up 60-degree ice and over short mixed steps. Whenever I wanted a piece of protection, it was there. Oh. Touch one thing on the keyboard and your life changes. But probably a good point to just point out that our snow cave was somewhere around here. We continued across the ledge, finally turned the steep rock overhead, and this is the Colorado Spur, and went into this gully here. And this is where the climbing was so good. I turned the final rock bend and entered a perfect couloir of rolling ice right here. For a moment, I saw myself from a bird's eye view, and I was moving quickly and confidently in my yellow and blue suit, my tools going in with precision and purpose. I was an animal of the wall. I belonged there. Then my reverie was shattered by Ward bellowing, "Blanchard, you damn lead hog! Bring me up! Let me lead some of this!" I smiled, then I passed him the rack. What can I say, man? It was just so good, and it just kept coming. I'd hogged an 800-foot block. Ward led us to the east summit. It was 10 a.m., and through the haze, I could just make out the man-high crucifix marking the west summit. It floated in and out of my vision like a phantom. Never any hard lines. We smiled and shook hands, took off the rope, and started down toward the east ridge. So yeah, in John's fabulous shot here, can kind of see our whole route actually with the, can't quite see that final couloir, but yeah, the Angel Glacier here where we actually got up the ice fall where it got really spooky when the Serac settled a centimeter under my feet. And we sat on our packs here and got the stove out and brewed up for an hour, got liquids and food into us. And then up, here's the diagonal ramp, base of the Chenard Becky Duty. And then across the ledge, snow cave in here, out here. And this is where we got around and into the Colorado Spur and that beautiful finish. So we finished the route here and are just about to start descending the East Ridge here. And it's there's another ridge in the background there that's stacking up against the East Ridge. Is that true? No, maybe this is all the East Ridge. The East Ridge has a little steep step in here, the crux of the East Ridge. Really good rock climbing actually in the summertime and in the wintertime. But this is the scene of one of our upcoming kind of tense moments and another great one-liner that would carry through the rest of the year. And in John's shot, interesting to note for one, the Ghost Glacier, which has since fallen away about 4 years ago, but a large natural slab avalanche kicked out from this unsupported slope, and remnants of an old crown coming across here on another unsupported slope. Can you tell that I've been teaching avalanche safety training courses as of late? Yeah. I'd hogged an 800-foot, we started down the East Ridge. At one point, we did a rappel, and I pulled the rope down and let it pile up at my feet. Ward turned and down climbed a short wall, then stood on a ledge looking back up to me. I wanted the rope out of the way, and I grabbed the end and took some coils. "I'll throw this down to you, Ward." So Ward is standing on this snow ledge here, and I'm going to throw the rope down here. And he's already down climbed this chunk of rock here. And I chucked the coils just as a strong gust tore over the ridge. What happened next made me sick. The coils were hauled on the wind and hurled over the south face. The rope rose to life in an accelerating loop, and in half a heartbeat, the end snapped like a whip and whistled over the edge, and the rope was gone. Our only rope was gone. I wanted to yell, but I had no breath. We had 1,000 feet of down climbing and rappelling to go, and we had no rope. I looked down to Ward's eyes, and they were calm and casual under the blue hood of his down jacket. My eyes were pleading. "Well, we don't have to carry that anymore," he smiled. And then he reassured me, saying that we should be able to solo down the rest of the ridge if he remembered right. Ward had soloed a route on the north face in the fall and descended the East Ridge. I tried to down climb to Ward 5 times and retreated upward. Each time I felt myself teetering on the edge of a fall. I was scared and considered pounding in a piton and lowering on my prussics tied together. Ward sat patiently on his pack. I tried down climbing again, and this time I found a hold that I'd been missing. My moves weren't pretty, but they worked. I made it to Ward, but I was a bit of a wreck from the adrenaline that I'd just processed and the knowledge that I'd burned half hour of daylight. I forced myself to peek over the south face for the rope, and the rope was hooked over a rock spike 20 feet below. I managed to recover it by rappelling to the end of my tied together prussics, inverting at the waist, turning upside down, and hooking the rope with one of my ice tools. Nice recovery of the rope, Ward said. My crisis had cost us an hour, but at midnight, Geoff pulled us back onto the dark, cold streets of Banff, and he and I were up early the next morning in Canmore, meeting the CBC folks at the Yamnuska Mountain School. Such rich and fulfilling lives we lead, I quipped. So yeah, the rope dropping incident happened somewhere around there, and then we descended the rest of the East Ridge. 3 days later, on March 14th, Ward and I were driving north again. We had 1 week to climb, and we wanted to try the Emperor Face on Mount Robinson, but concluded that it just wasn't going to fit unless we could afford or get someone to pay for a helicopter. We'd looked long and hard at the north face of Howse Peak on the descent from the Wild Thing the winter before, and although seracs negated half of the face, a chimney system swept by them safely, and a line was there waiting for us. All righty. So yeah, off to Howse Peak 3 days later. So yeah, the energy and ambition of those years is good to recall. But those years are gone. So yeah, here's the Wild Thing, the route that we had done a year earlier with Peter Arbick on the northeast face of Mount Chephen. And it was while descending from that route that Ward and I had a really good look at the north face of Howse Peak, the sister peak to Mount Chephen. And yeah, this is actually waterfowl lakes here in the foreground. And we started out, Ward and I, in the early morning by headlamp, and actually, skied up what we thought was toward Chephen Lake. And you can just see some of Chephen Lake here. And so we'd skied across Waterfowl Lake and then gone up and thought we were skiing towards Chephen Lake, but we got sucked into this draw actually. And it was a bummer because in the early morning light, just as dawn was coming on, we realized that we were actually going downhill following a creek, and we're going to end up back at the Mistaya River. So we gone 180 degrees the wrong direction. And that was a bit of a bummer. So I turned the skis around and cranked up the V8 into, 5,000 RPM, 10,000 RPM, something like that, and started crashing through the timber, kind of had a hissy fit, but used that energy to point us in the right direction and eventually get us to Chephen Lake. So we ski across Chephen Lake and then enter the moraines below Howse Peak and eventually get up into the higher country here. And it was quite a question mark about how to get up the first part of the ridge. Do we go out on these large, potentially, avalanche prone, or they avalanche at times, pretty big slopes just even to get to those. So an avalanche threat here, steep unclimbable rock maybe here, ride the moraine, and then as we get closer, see this beautiful little arcing gully going up this first rock band, and that proved to be the key to the start of the route. And I can't really see that buttress in this photo, but from that little arcing, not little, 500-foot high arcing couloir with grade 2 water ice in it, we're going to get on this arête of snow and punch steps up here. And then we are joining the route of 1967 by Don Vacheroth and Lloyd McKay. And I think Chick Scott was on that one, maybe Ken Baker. And I apologize, might have been Charlie Locke. Apologize to anyone I've got that bit of history wrong with. And Ward and I ended up soloing up a lot of this, even these little rock bands, and eventually putting the rope on here somewhere. Ward took this rock band, and then I had a kind of a bizarre pitch where I lowered off a snow mushroom to gain this snow ledge. And our ambition is to get into this feature, which is the key to the first part of the route. And we called it the gash because it was a really deep chimney system. And from there, we had envisioned getting into this crease and climbing up to the summit of Howse Peak, And then as I've said in the past on some of these presentations, this is what you want. This is what you get. Yeah, so a couple days down the road, our first snow cave in on this ledge, second snow cave or ledge, night on a ledge in a natural cave in the gash, and then out here and realizing that we probably wouldn't be able to climb that. I think I called it unclimbable at the time, probably unclimbable. Looking now, I think someone should go up there at some point, straighten out the route and investigate it. But Ward and I ended up finishing out here with one night last night spent on a snow mushroom about here, and then topping out the ridge the next day. Our fourth day of the ascent, I think. So yeah, this is Ward on that lateral moraine, and discovering this little arcing gully that would lead us up this first buttress and avoid the avalanche slopes to the left, Serac threat to the right. And I should point out that, yeah, almost, anything from here over on this face is just kind of negated by these Seracs, the threat of the edge of the glacier falling down on you when you're there trying to climb. So it was nice that the gash avoided all of that really very, very threatening terrain. While I'm on this slide, a second attempt was actually done on this route a couple of years later by Peter Arbic and Alex Lowe. And I couldn't believe it. They got up here and Peter climbed some wild ice pitch out here and avoided the hard pitches that Ward and I did in the gash. Not that his ice climb was easy. Alex Lowe, for the best climber in the world at that time, got up there and said to Peter, I don't know how you climb that. And one of those little ice features that just goes for 100 feet, and PA got to the top of it. But when they got up here, even Alex Lowe said, man, I've had enough. We got to get out of here. So they traversed over here and went up this gully. So yeah, Ward heading towards the arcing couloir. And we often accuse Ward of being Robert Redford's younger brother who went alpine, and just, ridiculously handsome guy. And having a good time in that arcing couloir on a little bit of grade 2 ice, stuff that's quite controllable for us as expert climbers. So we're not using the rope. And probably the hardest climbing on that arcing couloir was coming out the top here, just this actually vertical snow climbing, some of the most challenging stuff in the mountains, snow climbing, period. Mostly because it's often danger with the threat of, or endangered by the threat of avalanche, and it's really hard to figure that out. But when it does get steep and vertical, it can be quite challenging. It's, is there ever enough to really hold the shaft of your ice axe that you punched in there 20 times to get it all the way to the head at a positive angle? When you pull on it, is it going to shear through the snow, or is it not going to shear through the snow? I remember being really wide at the top of that with my feet, punching for support and trying to distribute my weight amongst my 4 points of contact, and but enjoying it. Really focused my climbing at that moment. And that little bit of hard snow climbing here, and then Ward and I sat on a ledge here and sat on our packs for 10, 15 minutes and had something to eat and look around and look at this edge of this. It looked like the taut edge of a sail on a big sailboat, like a big sloop. And this beautiful ridge of snow leading up to where we'd start getting into the mixed ground. And Ward heading up the edge of that snow feature, and the stuff that we soloed up and then eventually put the rope on, I think, here for this pitch that Ward led. And Ward in those pitches, and just so much talent, encapsulated in this slide image of Ward, with, a full pack. We've got the rope on now. We're starting to put in equipment to protect against a fall. I think for a while we moved together, so either end of a rope moving together with protection in between a force class, so if a fall happens, we don't get pulled off the mountain. but we can move together and not be as slow as fifth class climbing, where one of us climbs and the second climbs, so it takes twice as much time. Just do the math, right? Both moving together or one at a time, twice as much time. So Ward on some fifth class ground here, his mitts on, clearing snow off of ledges, hooking his crampons on ledges, figuring it out, ferreting out the equipment. And Ward, pretty aggressive guy, sometimes foregoing equipment to go faster, or if pulling on a piece of gear makes him faster, he does that because, yeah, free as can be. That was our ethic up there. It's more important to move fast than it is to worry about free climbing ethics so much. And yeah, an example of that, above Ward's anchor after that last pitch, I climbed up and I was on this snow mushroom. We had to get down to the snow ledge, and it looked like it was really hard to climb down to the snow ledge. So I was trying to get something to rappel down to the snow ledge, but nothing was presenting itself. So I had this idea, hey, Ward, if I get down on my knees, I think you can lower me off this snow mushroom. So yeah, Ward takes my weight on the rope. I let the ropes cut in, into the snow mushroom, and he lowers me down to the snow ledge. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, if the ropes cut through the snow mushroom, I'm going to be like a cat when I hit the snow ledge, like claw in with my ice axes and my crampons. And then I'm thinking, wait, I'm going to be chased down onto the snow ledge by at least a couple tons of well-bonded snow. So thankfully, the ropes didn't cut that deeply into the snow mushroom. Just proves to you how dense these things can be and how well bonded they can be to the wall, actually, when it's wintertime. Come summertime, they're going to fall off, and they really hurt when you get hit by them. That I can attest to. So yeah, when it was Ward's turn to come, what we did was he had a belay on one of the ropes, and he climbed directly across with a reverse overhead rope. And then we got onto the ledge. So he didn't go to the top of the snow mushroom. He came across tension on one of the ropes from above, one from sideways from me, from my anchor. And when he got over here and got to the first piece of protection, he untied from the one rope. I pulled it through, and then he retied. And he came across, taking the gear out, the hard found and hard fought for, and one gear that keeps us anchored to the mountain. And we got our first snow cave on the north face of Howse Peak, right in here. And is that right? No, I think we were up here. We were up in here. And that's the site of our first snow cave. Then the next day, we're going to enter the gash. And the climbing in the gash is going to prove pretty hard and challenging. And we end up spending a second night in the gash. And Ward, happy outside our first snow cave and looking up into the gash, and me taking the picture, smiling Ward, and there's the gash, and me thinking, man, humans aren't supposed to be here. This is just some kind of spooky, wild place, and real, I don't know, a feeling of, for me, a feeling of kind of a little bit of dread and oppression entering this place. And somewhere out here, I don't know where, Peter's ice line that he and Alex would climb in the future. But yeah, Ward and I go up, and I take a pitch here that ends with some pretty tenuous and involved snow climbing to get back in and get above a snow mushroom and get an anchor. Ward takes over, does a pitch, and then I take over. No, he takes over and gets to this curtain. It was just the wildest thing. This curtain of snow, 3 inches thick, probably, I don't know, 40, 50 feet high, 10 feet wide, like a drape, and it's hanging there, and it's snow. And Ward gets up there and hits it with his ice axe, and in behind is this room with a flat floor. So he knocks a lot of this stuff away, and it just comes away effortlessly. The stencil of his ice axe, sometimes perfectly preserved in this sheet of snow just hanging, completely unclimbable, but kind of thing you just, I don't know where else I've ever seen it in my climbing career. And just a wild, wild feature, you know, and we have to remove it. And it kind of reveals this flat floor in this room. And out above the flat floor is this overhang where the snow eventually gets removed. And there's a crack that goes out the roof of this overhang. And we have a flat floor, and I get up towards anchor, and he's like, wow, look at this, a room. And it's getting later in the day, so a room is great. We got a flat floor to spend the night with no work, having to shovel out a snow cave. And snow caves take 2 to 3 hours of hard work to excavate on these faces. And the weather had cleared up. We'd started off in kind of stormy or cloudy conditions. One of the reasons we took the wrong turn, but I can't blame it all on the clouds. Just dumbass thing to do, not noticing the water's going, you know, flowing 180 degrees opposite of where you want it to flow. But with the clouds, I can blame it on the clouds. You can't see anything. It's dark. So which way's up, right? Yeah. The water could give us a hint there if we had really paid attention. Yeah. So yeah, I get up towards anchor, and I'm pretty psyched out that, wow, you know, yeah, something about this place that isn't clicking with me. And if Ward had suggested retreat, I would have been all over it. But I don't want to be the guy who breaks the topic of retreat. But Ward knows me pretty good by now, and especially as a climbing partner. And he can just see that I am not psyched to head up on this roof. So, you know, he suggests that he takes the roof, and he's got way more aid climbing experience than I do. You know, first ascent of all along the watchtower on North Howse Spire, very early ascent of Mescalito on El Cap, along with some other aid routes on El Cap, hard aid routes on Squamish Chief. It's a lot more aid climbing experience than I have. So, yeah, it'll be a lot faster if you take this pitch, Ward. So I actually get in my sleeping bag and belay because it's getting dark. And Ward goes out. He's putting in cams and nuts, and banging in pitons. He disappears over the lip. And I'm paying out the rope. I'm nervous. I'm warm because I'm in my sleeping bag. That's a good thing. And suddenly the rope slows down, and, you know, snow is tinkling down over the edge of that roof. I'm back inside the mountain. And suddenly Ward's like, watch me, man. I got a crappy knife blade in here. I'm going to move on it. And it's like, okay, oh boy. So pay out some rope, and then falls just happen so abruptly and violently. Falls are violent. And Ward comes crashing out of the sky in that little cathedral frame of daylight that I have. And he hammers down as I lock off the rope and get yanked. And not quite a factor one fall. He was above the belay, spinning around on the rope, but a pretty serious fall. I'm like, oh man, you know, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, lower me down. So I lower him down to the ledge, and it's like, now if I was freaked out before, I'm more freaked out now. And it's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to pull the ropes and start getting out of here in the morning. And he's like, just give me a minute. I'm going to go up and try again. Just such a tough guy, like such a tough guy. So he shakes it off and heads back up there, and you know, gets to the shaky pin. The rope keeps going out, snow keeps trickling down, and then it's starting to flow down because I know it. Then I know he's into deeper snow, and then very soon he's shouting, off, rappel. Rappels back down, and he's got us, you know, above this challenging pitch, having taken a 30-foot fall. We bed down for the night, and I really got to hunker down, get warm, get hydrated, get fed as Ward does. And I got to find my confidence. I got to, you know, that point in my life, I was probably still praying to God. If I was there these days, I would pray to my grandmother and my grandfather, and I would pray to the Creator to help me. And hopefully my grandmother and my grandfather would show up behind my shoulders to help me. And yeah, I'm sure I was praying. And yeah. Thing that helped was having Ward right beside me, and then the northern lights just in our little cathedral little window there. They went off that night, you know, purples and jades and yellows, and just amazing display of the northern lights, one that I'd seen 6 years previous on the north face of Mount Kitchener the night before the Grand Central Couloir with another dear friend, Kevin Doyle. So yeah, in the morning, got up, and we Jumar up towards High Point. I take the rack and actually fired a good pitch, and off with mixture of aid and free climbing, clearing snow, climbing well, got my confidence. And I remember bending one of my front points, kicking at the rock so hard to get the damn boot to bite into the crack. And, one of the front points paid the price. I just straighten it out as good as I can with my ice axe. And of course, then you're putting it at risk of breaking because you've put metal fatigue into it. But yeah, we get up, I get into the couloir, I'm excited. We figure out that this, is just going to be too much and maybe not climbable. Like I say, someone should go and figure that out. 10 years later, 11 years later, I was across here and figuring this out, that this would go with Steve Howse and Scott Backes in 1999. But yeah, we get up onto this glacier and it's such a change. You've been in this, right inside the skin of the mountain, dealing with these overhangs and bizarre snow features and technical climbing, just so much of it. And then you come out and it's a big, broad expanse of acres and acres of flat, some of it flat, top of a glacier. It's just so bizarre, the juxtaposition. And what was even more bizarre is Ward comes up to my last anchor, and we have the conversation. Well, we don't even have the conversation about the crease yet. He just says, I'm not having any fun anymore. I'm not enjoying this. I think we should get out of here. And I'm like, wow, where did that come from? And he's suggesting traversing off and going up this gully. And we have the conversation about the crease. And I say, Ward, the weather's good. We don't have any reason to go down or back away yet. Why don't we go check out this feature over here? It looks like it's climbable. So Ward and I traverse over and get into here, get in some really good mixed and thin ice climbing, little rock overlaps where we got to really jump on our skills and do what we do well, figuring out rock ice and snow all at the same time. And then ice strips or small ice faces that lead us up into here. And somewhere up around here, Ward gets, the real serious pitch of the whole route and pulls through on it. We have our last night up on one of these, a feature like this, but higher on the wall. But as you can see, beautiful blue sky day. And I'm kind of psyched now and about to feel kind of bad for my buddy who takes off on this pitch. You can see that we're climbing without the packs, means that we haul the pack. One of the packs gets hauled on one of the ropes every anchor, and the other person Jumars with the pack or Jumars with both packs, using the rope clamps to go up the wall or up the rope. And this was a very, very serious pitch, kind of pitch that, you probably wouldn't go out on if you knew it was going to become a potentially fatal fall. Ward found himself 70 feet out from the anchor, and you can see he's climbing with bare hands, trying to get as much grip on the rock as possible, putting gloves on some of the time, working with his tools some of the time, but he can't find any gear for 70 feet. And it's like 5-7 climbing, not the hardest climbing in the world, but it's still climbing, and it's all covered with snow. And, he shouts down to me, I can do the climbing, but I can't find any gear. And it's the decision point. Can he down climb from there? Maybe. Does he commit to what might be a lethal fall, falling 140 feet in the Alpine, and then with roach stretch, it's going to add up to 160 feet. Can you survive a fall like that? People do often, but in your mind, it's no longer the fear of falling, it becomes the fear of dying. And those two fears are totally different fears. One of them gets your attention maximally and can get you really spooked. The other one takes your breath away and makes it like you're breathing dry sand and you can't breathe. I'm laughing about it now. Obviously, he pulled through and made it up this pitch. But my point is, that had he known it was going to get that serious and that bad, he would have never went up there, nor would have I. And for the several pitches in my climbing career, I don't know, maybe a dozen, half a dozen, that I've got into that situation, would I have left the belay knowing it would get like that? No, not even as a young man. I wouldn't have left the belay. It's just too serious. But he committed and pulled through, started finding gear, and led this pitch and got us up the north face of Howse Peak. And I remember getting up to the anchor. This is his anchor on top of that pitch, and getting up and his electric blue eyes just sparking. And I'm like, wow, Ward, that was amazing. That potentially the best piece of climbing you've ever done. Was it technically the hardest? No. Did it take the most of his being to put it together? Yes. Did it ask for more than what he'd come up with in the past? Yes, it did. And he came up with it. In my eyes, that man was a hero at that anchor. And in his eyes, I said, wow, Ward, that was amazing. That I think that may be the best I've ever seen you climb. And Ward, another one of his great takeaways from that year, outside of it's got to get done, and then we won't have to carry that anymore, was he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I was just freaking giving her. He didn't say freaking, but yeah, pretty good moment. So yeah, I traversed over to a snow mushroom. We took the top off the snow mushroom, laid down, and Ward refused to have his shoulders out over the void. So I put mine out there, and then we sardine against each other. So we have a bit more room, and his shoulders are against the mountain. And we have equipment in, of course. So we're sleeping with our harnesses on and tying in the stove and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, wild night. Not a great picture, not mine. I don't know where the heck I got it. But here's the feature that we climbed up, and we're bivvied on one of these snow mushrooms up here. And it's like sleeping on top of a weather balloon, especially from my end, because the thing is shaped like a big Christmas ornament, a Christmas ornament that's 4 meters in diameter. So, all around me is the void and overhang. And then somewhere down below the 4 meter lump of snow, the snow mushroom, is some pedestal of rock that it's all resting on, or a little ridge of rock or something. But yeah, our last night, and then the next day, pay out the rope to Ward, goes over, gets us up to that summit ridge line of Howse Peak. And then we have this massive kind of descent. So we top out here, and it was a blue sky day, but we didn't go to the summit. We were getting pretty darn tired, out of fuel, out of food, of course. And we've got to traverse all the way across this ridgeline, someplace that Donnie Gardner did as a winter traverse with another partner. Donnie went all the way from Saskatchewan River crossing, cross Mount Sarbach, cross the Kaufman Peaks, cross Mount Epaulet, cross Chephen, which is called the White Pyramid or the Black Pyramid, cross the White Pyramid, Howse Peak, Aries, I forget the names of a lot of these peaks, came out of Cauldron Lake like 3 days later. Donnie Gardner, man, what a guy. Anyways, so Ward and I are doing some of Donnie's traverse in reverse. We've got to go over to the White Pyramid, traverse a sickle of alpine ice to get to the Black Pyramid, and then repeat our descent of the year before, but go all the way down these slopes to our skis at Chephen Lake. And late in the day, we get to the end of Chephen Lake, and it's getting dark, and we haven't had any food for a day. We've run out of food. I think the night before kind of had sparse rations. So after 1, 2, 3 nights spent on the face, this is the 4th day. And we get to the end of Chephen Lake, and there's a bit of exposed water where the creek is flowing out from the lake, and it isn't frozen over. So there's water. So we get this cold water in our Nalgene bottles, and we have 1 bag of hot chocolate left, size of my fist. And Ward and I are taking handfuls of this hot chocolate, putting it in our mouths, taking in ice cold water, making a slurry inside our mouths, and greedily guzzling down this hot chocolate mud, ice cold mud. But yeah, gets our our sugar levels spiked back up, and we make it back out to the highway in good time. And yeah, one of the few faces, those two, the north face of Edith Cavell and the north face of Howse Peak, that we walked up the very first attempt in the wintertime and were able to climb up these routes. And yeah, of course, come down. But so many other routes, like Chephen that I talked about last time we were together, took 15 days of my life over 5 different attempts to put the route up. So yeah, it was pretty cool the next winter to finally get close to the, this is what I want and this is what you get. Had this vision of being a perfect alpinist in my mind, and I put a lot of effort and I don't know, endeavor towards getting there. And probably some of the closest I came to attaining that ideal was during that year, 1988. And yeah, Ward and I got down to the truck, and that was the middle of March. And then 2 or 3 months down the road, Ward, Kevin Doyle, myself, and Mark Twite left for the Rupal face of Nanga Parbat in the Himalaya of northern Pakistan. Probably one of the biggest mountaineering adventures of my life, but one that isn't in the Canadian Rockies. So I'm not going to talk about that in these episodes. And yeah, that's what we got here today. And yeah, Ward and I still in touch, of course. One of my very, very dear friends, and one of those handful of partners I made climbing on the sides of mountains when I was young and strong. And those friendships have just been so enduring over time. And yeah, recently in Vancouver. So yeah, I don't know if there's any questions. I'll see if I can bring up my chat box here and see if anything's been relayed. And I'm not getting my chat box there, so I'll turn off. And I've got the chat now, but looks like nobody wants to talk to me or ask me any questions, or Tim hasn't had time to type them in from his relay station over at his desk. But maybe he'll come running in here with written down questions, as he often does. And look at that, on cue. No questions? We'll see if he's got questions. But I will mention that I'll be doing this again in 2 weeks' time. So it's the 2nd today, 14 days, should be the 16th. It'll be episode 4. And I will be talking about, got to even think of my own history here, talking about another climb with Ward on Mount Temple called Striving for the Moon, and also a climb with Jim Elzinga, a summertime alpine climb, the first ascent of the northwest ridge of Mount Alberta. So those 2 climbs are next episode in this series. So yeah, if you get the time to stop by, please do. Thanks for showing up today. And I think I had those climbs in reverse. So first I'll be talking about the northwest ridge of Mount Alberta, because it happened first, I think in 1991. And then Striving for the Moon on Mount Temple in 1992, 91 or 92. So that'll be the next episode. And yeah, I'll also mention that I'm speaking, as are some of the other Yamnuska guides, at the Southern Ontario Ice Fest on Saturday. So if you Google that, you can find that on the internet and see what we'll be talking about. Pretty much all ice climbing stuff. So not a lot of alpinism or winter alpine climbing included in that. But with that, I'll bid you all adieu, and hopefully see some of you back here in a couple weeks' time. And yeah, stay safe out there, be healthy, and look forward to seeing you again. Take care.